a number of complicated graphics, but I pulled those out for now. The cargo ship started to decline into the Port of Vancouver in late 2019, very early, and that's because 30% of the cargo vessels, container ships, come from China, and China was already starting to shut down industrially in the early parts of 2020. And so the shutdown in shipping was starting to happen in January and February, even though more socially, we weren't shutting down perhaps till March and April, but the shipping was already starting to decline in January and February. That has continued as we went into the economic shutdown. Things like BC ferries were shut down to, I think at their minimum, a 20% operation. Cruise ships shut down completely. But the cargo ships, they started to come back by June and July and August. And in many of the main freighter routes, they were almost back to normal in September. So next slide, please. This is a graph showing recordings from the Central Strait of Georgia. And we did a maintenance and we switched the hydrophone, the transition from blue to red in March. But we see in the beginning of March with the perhaps the reduction of BC ferries and cruise ships and other more personal transports on the water, the top band there is the quietest times of the environment. There's a drop there of up to 6 dB that lasted for almost several months. And 6 dB is a significant drop on a weekly basis. We're talking about the quietest times were significantly quieter for long periods. The middle panel there is the average intensity, the red curve when I was showing the histograms of the spectrum. And the lower curve is the loudest periods that are recorded during the day. So the top 1% of the intensity sounds. And even there, we see that a drop persisted for several months of -3 dB, which is a factor of 2. So the acoustic data supports a significant drop in the acoustics. Just click one more there. And again, so this is at the 100 kilohertz band at the peak of that blue shaded area. So we're seeing, that's it. So we're seeing a drop in that peak band around the shipping associated with the economic and social activities in the March-April period. But what we're also seeing is that gradually things were coming back to normal by late summer. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to conclude here that we did see shipping reductions starting in late 2019. Primarily container ships from China were the first to sort of drop off the grid. Ferries were then reduced. Cruise ships continue to be docked. This was a global phenomenon, although I've presented data mostly from the Salish Sea. We were seeing similar reductions offshore along the major shipping lanes in through the Pacific as well. Much analysis and assessments are ongoing. And then the last slide, the questions would come back as to have the sound levels already returned to normal? They are creeping back up. There are certainly industries that are still tied up. Cruise ships is the best example, perhaps. Will the short-term reprieve result in any real significant health advantages? That's a long-term question. We're looking at, obviously, there's been a few orca whales that have been born during this summer, and we can hope that that their long-term health is improved, even if it was only a 6 to 8 month reprieve. Those sort of things would have to have a population impact, which may take several years to assess. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you very much. And I'll take questions, but I assume the moderator will help me with that. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Richard, for that great presentation. I know you pared down a lengthy presentation into 15 minutes for us, and it really is remarkable, and listening to the audio that you have in there is great. So maybe we can share some of that information somehow for folks who are interested in learning more. We have one question that I'll pose to you since we just have a couple minutes, and then there's another question in the Q&A that maybe if you get a chance, Richard, you can go in there and just type out an answer. Great. The one question I'll pose to you now is, do you know if there are regulations addressing recreational boaters and noise reduction? This person mentioned that WDFW, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, set up a SEPA regarding commercial whale watching. That kind of trails off, but specific to recreational boaters, do you know anything about regulations on noise reduction?
Well, I'm not directly on noise reduction, but there are the regulations which try to keep recreational boats up to 400 meters away from orca.
Mhm.
And the whale watching boats are allowed to get within 200 meters of the transient orcas. They are typically more stealth than the residents who are using echolocation to find food, but there are no restrictions on recreational boats for sound. And this is in some sense, we're lagging behind. Europe does have sound regulations. They have introduced sound limits for major shipping, but recreational traffic is measurable in the Salish Sea area. In fact, that picked up this summer. There was a lot of recreational activity, but there are no regulations on sound sources from recreational boats, as far as I'm aware. No.
Great. Thank you so much, Richard. Great
You're very welcome.
presentation. Again, if you have more questions, you want to pose them in the Q&A, I'll ask Richard to monitor that as we move forward. But thank you again, and I'll turn the virtual mic back over to Hillary.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you so much, Richard. What a great presentation. Really appreciate that.